Leader of the third party.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I'm heartened to hear the Attorney General say things this morning, including that we need to work together to address serious issues, and his comments about the all-party committee and the value of that work. For years, advocates have asked for a review of the Mental Health Act. It was asked for in 2017 by the Community Legal Assistance Society. It was asked for in 2019 by the Office of the Ombudsperson. And just last week, the government's own Special Committee on Reforming Police Act recommended that the Act be reviewed by an all-party committee. So it was incredibly welcome news when the Attorney General reported that the Act will be significantly modernized. But this moment of joy was interrupted when we realized that the process is going on behind closed doors. To quote the Attorney General, quote, "We're doing a review of those processes and the legislation because it's very dated." The Mental Health Act is criticized for its lack of accountability and oversight. It has caused significant harm to thousands of British Columbians. So this is not a tinkering around the edges situation without involving patients and families. This issue warrants a full public-facing review of the Act. It requires serious transparency to make sure that it's working for people and communities. My questions for you, Honourable Speaker, to the Attorney General. Why is the review an internal process by the ministry and not a public-facing committee as recommended by the Special Committee on Reforming the Police Act?
Attorney General.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. A couple of pieces. When I spoke to that reporter from the Tyee, I explained that we were doing a policy review of two pieces of legislation. One is the Adult Guardianship Act, and the other is the Mental Health Act. There are a number of lawsuits where the province is being sued in relation to the Mental Health Act. Part of that work obviously involves a policy review to make sure that we are responsive to what's happening. The reporter then, with the editor, decided to run a headline that we were overhauling the Mental Health Act. My team contacted the Tyee to say that's not what's happening. If I communicated that, just to be clear, we are not in that process. If we were, obviously, to the member, the community would be broadly involved in that process. We're doing the work that's necessary to respond to litigation and to make sure our legislation is up to date. I can advise the member that that work will continue.
Leader of the third party, supplemental.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. So we've gone from the news that there is an overhaul of the Mental Health Act, which is much needed, long overdue, to the news that there isn't an overhaul of the Mental Health Act. However, pieces of that legislation are being addressed behind closed door. But let's look at this government's record on this. The handling of would-be Bill 22, the involuntary stabilization care for youth, in the consultation process, behind closed doors, experts flagged that this legislation was harmful, but the government was determined to push it through despite resistance from the very communities it affected. And now, 2 years later, they finally recognized that it was deeply flawed legislation. The bill is buried in God, but the legacy of how this government is handling the Mental Health Act continues. Having private conversations that this government can ignore does not lead to trust. An all-party committee provides transparency to the public. They help depoliticize an issue. They show that the public that the collaborative work can be done to achieve consensus. The review of the Mental Health Act is necessary and overdue. It is an opportunity for justice for patients and families. But this government needs to work on rebuilding trust. My question for you, Honourable Speaker, is to the Attorney General. Will he commit to that review of the Act and ensure that it is done via an all-party committee?
Attorney General.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I explained to the member the routine and regular policy work that happens within the Ministry of Attorney General in relation to these kinds of issues. That work will continue, and the headline in the article was simply incorrect.